Welcome back to another network tutorial. In this tutorial, I am going to demonstrate how to set up SSH connectivity to a Cisco switch. The process will be almost same for other Cisco devices including routers and firewall. For this lab, these are the steps I am going to do, and the commands are going to be on the other side. I'm going to give you explanation when I'm applying this command to the switches, why we are doing these commands. The first thing we do is we need to have a host name, and then we need to have a domain name, and then I'm going to configure the IP address, and then username and password, and then I'm going to apply an enable password. Then only I'm going to do the crypto key, and then I'm going to enable SSH via VTY lines. So I'm going to explain all these things when I apply this configuration to the switch. So I'm going to log into the switch. So I'm going to use a Cisco 3750 G12S switch for this lab. I'm going to log into the switch using a serial connection first to do the configuration, and then we are going to switch over to SSH at the end. So I'm going to load this one. You see I have this serial connection loaded. I'm going to open this up. So this switch I just restored to the factory default. That's why it's asking whether you want to do the configuration through dialog box. So I would say no. And then now I am in the switch. So there's, if you can see, I can go into the switch without any username and password because there's none set up when it come out of the factory. Show run. And you have a blank switch without any configuration. All right. And then let's look at show IP int brief. Except VLAN 1, there's nothing on the switch. And I have some interfaces plugged in. That's why these ports are saying up and up. So let's start the configuration. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to configure a host name. There's going to be host name network TUTOR network tutor -1 access. So now it is configured, and then I'm going to configure the domain name. So you need a domain name because SSH need a certificate. To obtain a certificate, the one we are going to do is a self-signed certificate. You need to have a domain name. Without a domain name and host name, you are not going to get a self-signed certificate inside the switch. So that's why we have to configure the host name and the domain name. So IP domain name www network.com. This domain name, I don't have this real domain name. You just make up a domain name. If you have a real one, just you can use that one. If you don't have any real domain name, just make up something and put it here. It doesn't care because It's just a self-signed certificate and the key. Now we have configured the domain name. I'm going to configure the username and password. Username is going to be Cisco, and for the password you can set the privilege level. Cisco have privilege from 0 to 15. Privilege 0 to 15. 0 is the least one, 15 is the most privileged account. So I will set 15, and you can say password here. If you say password, this password won't be encrypted. So to get an encrypted password, you need to say secret. And then I'm going to set my password is going to be Apple BW. So I'm just going to make the E as number 3. And then I need to set the enable password. So that means to get into the privilege exit mode, it's going to ask you a password. So first thing, you need to log into the switch. So for that, you need a username and password. That's what we have set here. To get into the privilege mode, to do the configuration, you need to set a privilege password. So that's what we are going to set up now. So for that, you say enable, that's called enable password, right? So enable, and then you can say password. That means this password is not going to be encrypted. So I will say secret. Secret again, I would say same password, APPLEBW, Apple B. Okay, so I have set up all these passwords. So one thing we have to look at inside the switch configuration is how we can enforce this username and password. So inside the default running config, you have an answer. Show run. If you see here, by default, Cisco ship out the switch with no AAA new model. So that means it will not enforce a username and password. So we have to enforce the users put their username and password so we know who is making the change. So what we have to do is conf t AAA new model. So this AAA means authentication, authorization, and accounting. That's what is called AAA new model. So now we enabled these authentications, and the next step we have to do is enable the crypto. So to enable the crypto, you need to make sure your iOS operating system can handle the cryptographic functionality. So to do that, what you can do is show version and look at your iOS version. In the iOS version, if you see a word called K9, that means this iOS is capable of doing the cryptographic functionality. So it's called a cryptographic image. So this one can do that. And another way you can make sure is conf t crypto and type crypto, and you can see if you get any option here, that means this can do cryptographic functionality. So I'm going to create the cert and the key. So crypto and key generate and RS. You don't have to remember, just you need to remember crypto, and then you can get all other commands. The default is 512. You need to enable at least 1024 to have SSH version 1 or version 2. So I'm going to put 1024. It's going to generate the cert and the key. And so if you see here, right away the key got enabled, and you can see it has the SSH functionality here. SSH 1.99 has been enabled. Okay, now I have enabled the SSH functionality, and what I have to do is let's make sure I have the key properly installed. And I'm going to use this command show crypto key my pub key RSA. You can see key pair was generated at this time because I did not set the time on this switch yet, so that's why it's telling me the older time. So it's created a key cert and a key, and then I'm going to enable some SSH enforcement here. What I'm going to do is IP SSH timeout. You can see what is the timeout you can set, 1 to 120 seconds. These are in seconds. That means if you if this session is unattended for this amount of time, it will log out. It's timeout. So it's a good feature because when you walk out of the computer, if you don't exit this console connection, it will automatically time out after a certain time. So best practice is set to 30 seconds. This is most restrictive. Or otherwise, normally people set to 60 seconds. That's 1 minute. It's all depending on what environment they work. So I will set to 30 seconds, and then I will enable retries, IP SSH authentication retries. So what will happen is after this many retries, you have to start over. So I would set to test, I would set to 2. So that's best practice. Okay, and so everything has been done. The final step I have to do is I have to enable SSH on VTY lines. So right now, I am logged in via console connection, but for remote access, you are going to use SSH. Make sure you enable SSH only on the VTY lines. Don't even enable telnet. If you enable telnet, that means your communication between the switch and your computer will be in plain text. So that's not good for the security of your network. So conf t line VTY 0 to 15. The switches have 0 to 15 and routers have 0 to 4. That means you can have 16 concurrent VTY lines, and for routers you will have 5. But even though you set 0 to 15, if you look at the running config, it will break it down into 0 to 4 and 5 to 15. So you can do 2 different kind of configuration, that means. So I have done this one, and then I'm going to enable transport input, and you can see what are the options. You can have all protocols enabled. Never do that. None. That's not also good. And you enable only SSH. But you can enable both, like input transport input SSH telnet, and that means it will enable both of them. And you can see show run begin VTY. That means, not looking at everything, your entire running config, you start from VTY. And if you see the VTY 0 to 4 transport input SSH telnet, but don't enable both of them, only enable SSH. So conf t line VTY 0 to 15 transport input SSH. And so I'm just going to show you again. Show run. You see here now only SSH has been enabled. So now what we have to do is we need to try this telnet connection and see we have everything set up properly. So I will say one more thing I have to do is I forgot to set the IP address. So that's the show IP int brief. So there's nothing set in here. So there's no SVI or anything. So I'm going to create a management VLAN, because you always need to have a management VLAN to manage a switch. So conf t VLAN 225, and I'm going to say name management. I'm going to go into the int VLAN VLAN 225 IP address 192.168.1.100. mask is 255.255.255.0. So I have set up the IP address for the SVI. So if you see here, show IP int brief again, and you can see this VLAN management VLAN is now have an IP address. It is up and up. So what we have to do is we have to assign a port on this VLAN and assign a assign an IP address to this PC on the same subnet and do an SSH. So let's look at a port. I have a device connected to port 10 here. Conf t int gig 1010 switchboard mode access switchboard access VLAN 225 no shut. I'm going to connect this to my computer, and you can see and show int exit show int status. So right now it is not connected, so I'm going to connect this one now. My computer here. Okay, now it's connected. Let's see, it's coming up. Okay. Okay, now it is connected, and my computer has been assigned an IP address on this network. I do have a static IP assigned. Change adapter options, and if you see here, go to properties, IP version 4, and you can see I have assigned an IP address. I don't have to put a default gateway because the communication is within one VLAN. Most networks, you will have management VLAN will be same on all the switches with the same subnet. So you can have a PC on the same subnet on the same VLAN. Also, this can be routed if it is an enterprise environment. You can have this management network routed through the entire network, so you can access this from a different subnet. So let's try to ping the switch IP, CMD ping 192.168.1.100. That's a switch, this switch management IP. So you will lose one packet due to ARP. Okay, yep. So you are getting now. If you do a second time, you will not lose any packets. Okay, so now you have an IP connectivity, and let's do a write, and then let's close this one and try to access from SSH. So now I have set up this one. This is my SSH. I'm going to load this one. If you see here, the connection changed from serial to SSH, and I have connection through port 22. And let me open here. So first thing, you will be presented with the cert, and you need to trust this cert first, and then you will have another warning, and I will accept this one. Now it is asking login as. We know we set up a username is Cisco, and the password is Apple, LETRW, Apple tree. Okay, what's happening here? So let's see. APPLETRW, or did I set up as a Cisco? You see, it's closing because I exceeded the number of logins. I exceeded 2, so that's why it's closing my connection. I cannot. I have to reopen. Okay, let's try. Load, open, yes, username Cisco, password Apple B, not tree. Okay, that's what I made a mistake there. Enable, it's going to do the same verification again. BW, Apple B, enable, APPLE, BW, Apple B. Okay, so I'm into the switch again. So let me try another way. Okay, close it and load. Before I load, I can just put CISCO, Cisco at, so you can put username and this IP address, and I will save this one and load where I am going to save is I'm going to do here save, open, yes. So using username Cisco, so it's now directly asking you the password. So Apple BWE, so you are into the switch. You eliminate one step there. Enable Apple B. Now I am into the switch. So let's do a show SSH, and you can see I have this connection here. You can see here in and out connections are using my username. It's already started, and it's using a SHA-1 algorithm. It's the most encrypted. This encryption you see AES 256. So now you have established a very secure connection between your computer and the switch. Hope this video is helpful for you. If you think you have learned something new, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, don't forget to like and comment on this video. If you have any questions, ask them in the comment sections. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Also, don't forget to turn on notification bell so you will get notified as soon as I put a new video. All right, thanks, bye.